Imagine driving through the heart of the Midwest, where the horizon is dominated by flat plains and the steady growth of a rising city, only to find yourself staring up at a skeletal giant that shouldn't be there. In the center of Indianapolis, a $1.5 billion skyscraper looms over the streets like a ghost made of reinforced concrete and rusted rebar. It reaches 40 floors into the sky, but there are no windows, no lights, and no signs of life. For nearly 3 years, not a single hammer has struck a nail on this site. The cranes have been removed, the workers have moved on to other cities, and the local government is facing a mystery that sounds like a plot from a high-stakes financial thriller. Nobody officially knows who owns it. While the city tries to figure out who is responsible for this multi-billion-dollar eyesore, the structure is slowly deteriorating in the harsh Indiana weather. Today, we are going inside the most expensive disappearing act in the history of American real estate to find out how a $1.5 billion project reaches the 40-floor mark and then simply ceases to exist on the legal books. To understand how a skyscraper can just lose its owner, you have to understand the complex world of shell companies, offshore accounts, and the shadowy nature of international real estate funding. This project was pitched as a revolutionary mixed-use tower that would redefine the Indianapolis skyline. It was supposed to feature ultra-luxury condos, a 5-star hotel, and office space designed for the next generation of tech giants. On paper, everything looked perfect. The funding was secured through a consortium of private equity firms, and the architectural designs were world-class. Construction began with fanfare, and for the first 2 years it was moving at a record-breaking pace. Then, one Tuesday morning, the gates were locked, the site managers were gone, and the paper trail began to dissolve into a thick fog of legal jargon. The mystery starts with a company that we will call Alpha Vanguard Investments. This was the entity that originally purchased the land and secured the building permits. But as investigators started digging after the project stalled, they found that Alpha Vanguard was actually a subsidiary of an LLC registered in the Cayman Islands. That LLC was owned by a trust in Luxembourg, which was in turn managed by an anonymous board in Singapore. When the city tried to serve legal papers regarding building code violations, they found that the offices listed for these companies were nothing more than P.O. boxes in strip malls or shared desk spaces in glass buildings where nobody had heard of the project. A $1.5 billion physical object exists on Indiana soil, but legally, it is a ghost floating between continents. Why would a developer abandon a project after spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get 40 floors in the air? This is where the world of failing mega projects gets truly strange. In many cases, it is about more than just running out of money. It is a strategic disappearance. When a project of this scale hits a massive hidden cost, such as a structural defect or a sudden shift in the economy, sometimes the cheapest option for the investors is to simply walk away and dissolve the companies involved. By the time the lawsuits start, there is no entity left to sue. The investors take their tax write-offs and disappear into the night, leaving the city and the local contractors holding a billion-dollar bag of concrete. Inside the building, the scene is haunting. Because the exterior glass was never installed, the raw concrete floors are exposed to the elements. During the Indiana winters, snow drifts inside the elevator shafts. In the summer, rain pools in the center of what were supposed to be luxury living rooms, creating stagnant ponds that attract insects and mold. The steel rebar that was meant to tie the next 30 floors together is now orange with rust, a chemical process that is slowly weakening the structural bonds. Engineers warn that every day the building remains open to the sky, the cost of eventually finishing it doubles. The concrete is absorbing moisture, and the internal systems that were partially installed, like the HVAC ducting and electrical conduits, are being ruined beyond repair. But the real tragedy is the people who were left behind. Local contractors in Indianapolis are out of pocket for tens of millions of dollars. Small family-owned businesses that provided the gravel, the steel, and the labor were told the checks were in the mail right up until the day the project vanished. Because the ownership is hidden behind layers of international law, these local businesses have almost no way to recover their losses. It is a financial ripple effect that has damaged the local economy far more than the physical eyesore itself. Let's talk about the physics of an abandoned skyscraper. A building is designed to be a sealed system. When a structure is dried in, meaning the exterior walls and roof are finished, it is protected from the freeze-thaw cycle. But when a building is left open at the 40th floor, it becomes a giant radiator for problems. Water seeps into the microscopic pores of the concrete. When that water freezes, it expands, causing internal fractures that can't be seen with the naked eye. If this building stays abandoned for another 5 years, it might be structurally impossible to ever complete it. It would have to be brought down, floor by floor, a demolition process that would cost nearly as much as the original construction. The city of Indianapolis is in a legitimate bind. Under the law, they can't just seize a $1.5 billion building. There are rights of ownership that must be respected, even if the owners are hiding. The city has to go through a years-long process of declaring the site a public nuisance, but the legal teams of the wealthy investors, wherever they are, keep filing motions through anonymous representatives to delay the process. It is a game of legal chess where the prize is a giant concrete skeleton that nobody wants to take responsibility for. As we look deeper into the history of this specific site, rumors have started to circulate about why the money actually stopped. Some believe it was a case of money laundering on a massive scale. In this theory, the goal was never to finish the building. The goal was to move money through various international jurisdictions using a high-profile real estate project as the vehicle. Once the money was cleaned through the purchase of materials and the payment of shell entity contractors, the project served its purpose and was discarded. While this sounds like a conspiracy theory, it is a well-documented tactic in the world of global finance, and it leaves cities across the world with these zombie towers that they can't get rid of. If you walk past the site today, you can see the secondary effects of the abandonment. The surrounding businesses, once hopeful that 1,000 new residents and office workers would boost their sales, are struggling. The property values of the blocks directly adjacent to the tower have stagnated. A shadow is literally being cast over the neighborhood. And it isn't just a shadow of light, but a shadow of uncertainty. Who wants to open a restaurant or buy a condo next to a decaying 40-story mystery? Engineers who have consulted on the site anonymously say that the mid-level floors are already showing signs of significant stress. When a building isn't finished, the weight distribution isn't what the blueprints intended. The skeleton is designed to have the weight of the upper floors and the tension of the finished facade to hold everything in place. Without the top 40 floors and the exterior skin, the building is reacting to wind loads in ways the designers never simulated. It vibrates differently. It groans during high wind storms. Residents in the nearby apartments report hearing strange, metallic clanging as the wind whistles through the open concrete corridors of the 40-story ghost. The quest to find the owner has become a bit of a local obsession. Investigative journalists have tracked leads from Indianapolis to Panama to Zurich. Every time they think they have found the person at the top of the pyramid, they hit another wall of non-disclosure agreements and nominee directors. A nominee director is someone paid a fee to put their name on the corporate documents of hundreds of different companies to hide the identity of the true beneficiary. In this case, the trail leads to a professional director in the Seychelles who represents over 3,000 companies. He has likely never even seen a photograph of the building he technically controls. What happens next? Most experts agree that there are only two paths forward. The first is that a larger, more reputable developer eventually buys the debt at a massive discount through a forced auction. This would likely take years of litigation. The new developer would then have to spend hundreds of millions just to strip away the damaged parts of the existing tower before they could start building again. It would no longer be a $1.5 billion project. It would be a $2.5 billion reclamation project. The second path is much more tragic. If the structural damage becomes too severe, or the legal battle becomes too entangled, the building could remain a skeleton for decades. We have seen this happen in other cities around the world. In Caracas, there is the famous Tower of David, an office building that was abandoned and eventually became a vertical slum. While that is unlikely to happen in a city like Indianapolis, the possibility of a permanent concrete ruin in the middle of a major American downtown is a disturbing reality that the city council is desperately trying to avoid. This situation highlights the danger of the globalization of real estate. When local buildings are owned by local people, there is a level of accountability. When a building is owned by a global algorithm designed to move capital across borders, the human element is lost. The building is no longer a place for people to live or work. It is just a line item on a spreadsheet, a digital asset that can be deleted if it stops being profitable. The city of Indianapolis is learning a hard lesson. They opened their doors to massive investment without ensuring that the heart of that investment was actually rooted in their community. To maintain the interest of the public, The city recently installed high-powered cameras to monitor the site for vandals or anyone trying to enter the structure. But the cameras are really there to watch for something else: movement in the building's frame. GPS sensors have been attached to the top floor to monitor if the tower is starting to tilt or sink. When a mega project fails, it doesn't just stop being expensive, it becomes a perpetual cost. The city is spending thousands of dollars every month just to monitor a building they don't even own. Think about the sheer waste of materials. Millions of cubic feet of concrete, thousands of tons of steel, and miles of copper wiring are sitting there rotting. In an era where we talk about sustainability and the environmental impact of construction, the abandoned tower is a monument to inefficiency. All of that carbon was emitted into the atmosphere to build something that might never serve a single human being. It is the dark side of the modern construction boom, where the speed of finance often moves much faster than the reality of building. If there is a silver lining to the Indianapolis mystery, it is the push for new legislation. Other cities are watching this disaster unfold and are passing new laws requiring beneficial ownership transparency. This means that you can't get a building permit for a project of a certain size unless you can prove exactly who the ultimate humans are behind the shell companies. They are also requiring massive bonds to be put into escrow that would pay for the completion or demolition of a building if the developer disappears. It is a get-it-in-writing approach to city planning that could prevent another one. $5 billion ghost from haunting a Midwestern city. For those fascinated by the technical side of these failures, the engineering reports on the Indianapolis site are a goldmine of data. They show how the wind flows through an empty concrete frame and creates harmonic resonance. This is a phenomenon where the building starts to sway rhythmically with the wind, which can lead to structural failure if not dampened by the weight of finished walls and glass. To prevent this, the engineers had to install temporary water tanks on the upper floors to act as giant weights, essentially tricking the building into thinking it weighs more than it does. Even in abandonment, the building requires active engineering to keep it from shaking itself to pieces. The story of the 40-story ghost is a warning to all of us who love the spectacle of a new skyscraper. We see the beautiful renderings and the glitzy groundbreaking ceremonies, and we assume that because it is big and expensive, it must be stable. But the Indianapolis situation proves that even $1 billion isn't enough to guarantee a finished product if the foundations of the finance are as hollow as the building itself. It is a reminder that cities are not just collections of buildings, they are social contracts. When one party in that contract vanishes, the whole system starts to fail. As the sun sets over Indianapolis, the light catches the rusted rebar at the top of the tower, making it look for a moment like it is glowing with the promise of completion. But then the light fades, the shadows grow long, and the city is left with the cold reality of its concrete giant. The mystery of the ownership remains. The lawyers continue to bill their hours to anonymous clients, and the wind continues to whistle through the empty fourth-floor office spaces that will never host a meeting. It is a $1.5 billion lesson in the volatility of the modern world, a skyscraper that serves as a monument to nothing. When we consider the future of our urban landscapes, we have to ask ourselves how many more of these zombie towers are waiting in the wings. As interest rates fluctuate and global investment patterns change, the risk of developers walking away from half-finished projects grows. The Indianapolis Tower is just the most high-profile example of a trend that could redefine the skylines of the 21st century. We might be entering an era where our cities are defined not by what they have built, but by what they have failed to finish. In the end, the building stands as a silent witness to a failed ambition. It is a peek into a global financial system that is increasingly disconnected from the physical world. For the people of Indianapolis, it is a daily reminder that progress is not always linear, and that sometimes the biggest things in our world are the most fragile. The quest for the owner continues. The structural monitoring goes on, and the 40-story skeleton waits for a future that might never come. It is an incredible story of wealth, secrecy, and the sheer power of gravity. We will keep watching the news from the heart of Indiana, waiting for the day a real name appears on the title of that one. $5 billion ruin. Until then, the tower will continue to be a playground for the wind and a giant question mark for everyone who passes by. It is the ultimate failing megaproject, a skyscraper abandoned at its peak with nobody to claim the bill. It is a haunting image of what happens when the money moves faster than the concrete can set. Stay tuned as this mystery unfolds, because in the world of billion-dollar skyscrapers, The most interesting stories are often the ones that were never finished. The ghost of Indianapolis is still standing, 40 floors high, waiting for someone to finally tell it who it belongs to.